It began as an ordinary school day for 9-year-old Madeline. But by nightfall, the community was gripped by fear. After hours of searching, her small body was found hidden in the woods near her home. The tragedy would not end there. Investigators soon uncovered a horrifying truth. The man accused was not a stranger, but someone within her own family circle. Madeline Heler was born in Jacksonville, Florida, in 1999. From the very beginning, those around her described her as a gentle, cheerful, and curious child. She grew up surrounded by family members who saw in her the promise of a bright future. Teachers at her elementary school would later remember her as an attentive student, eager to learn, and always the first to raise her hand in class. Her friends recalled her kindness, how she would often share her snacks or step in when another child was feeling left out. She lived primarily with her mother, who worked hard to provide stability. Like many children her age, Madeline thrived on routine, walking to school, spending afternoons on homework, and playing outside until the sun began to set. She loved drawing and often filled pages with colorful sketches of animals and flowers. Her life was meant to be simple, innocent, and filled with the joys of growing up. But as she entered her early teenage years, the environment around her began to change. Her mother's boyfriend moved into the household, a presence that seemed ordinary to outsiders, but created an undercurrent of tension behind closed doors. Despite the challenges, Madeline continued to excel academically, and she was known in her neighborhood for her friendliness and her smile that instantly warmed hearts. By the age of 9, Madeline was on the cusp of many new experiences, school projects, friendships, and the normal milestones of growing up. No one in her community could have imagined that her story, which had begun so full of hope, would soon be marked by one of the most tragic crimes Jacksonville had ever witnessed. On the morning of June 22, 2009, the rhythm of life in Jacksonville felt ordinary. For 9-year-old Madeline Heler, it was meant to be a day like any other: school, friends, and the quiet routines of childhood. But as the hours passed, something was wrong. By afternoon, her mother returned home to find an unsettling silence. Madeline, who was usually full of energy and noise, was nowhere to be seen. At first, the possibility of a small child wandering off was considered. Neighbors searched yards, calling her name, hoping she had gone to a friend's house or was simply playing outside. But as the minutes stretched into hours, that hope began to fade. Police were quickly notified, and the missing child alert spread through the neighborhood. Flyers were printed, roadblocks set up, and volunteers gathered with flashlights to comb the wooded areas nearby. Despite the urgency, there was a haunting stillness. No signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no footprints, nothing to indicate where she had gone. The absence of evidence deepened the mystery. How could a child vanish in the middle of the day without anyone noticing? The search for Madeline stretched from the first frantic evening into the cold dawn of the next day. By the third morning, more than 40 volunteers had joined police officers, combing through fields, ditches, and the wooded area that edged the Heler family's property. Neighbors carried flashlights, search dogs traced every trail, and helicopters scanned overhead with thermal cameras. Yet each passing hour deepened the dread that this was no ordinary disappearance. It was on the third day of searching, just after noon, that the breakthrough came. A K-9 unit, guided by a handler from the county sheriff's office, veered toward a dense patch of woods less than a mile from the family home. The dog alerted, barking and pulling frantically at its leash. Officers pushed through thickets of bramble until one spotted what looked like fabric, partially buried under leaves and branches. As they cleared the brush, the truth emerged. There, concealed in a shallow covering of earth and foliage, lay the body of 10-year-old Madeline Heler. The scene was devastating. Her clothing was torn, and evidence immediately suggested that this was no accident or misadventure. She had been assaulted and murdered, her small frame positioned as though hurriedly hidden by someone desperate to delay discovery. Forensic teams quickly secured the site, photographing every angle before carefully recovering her remains for autopsy. The location, so close to her own home, was a chilling reminder that the danger had never been far. When news of the discovery reached Madeline's mother, her reaction was one of complete collapse. Witnesses later described her screams carrying across the search site, raw and piercing, as she was held up by family members and neighbors who had spent days beside her, clinging to hope. She had walked those very woods during the search, calling her daughter's name, never realizing her child was concealed just beyond sight. The moment marked a turning point in the case. What had begun as a desperate hunt for a missing girl now became a homicide investigation. Officers who had been searching shoulder to shoulder with the stepfather now turned an investigative lens back on him, their suspicion deepening with every detail. The community, once bound together in shared hope, now stood paralyzed in grief. As the reality set in, Madeline had not wandered away. She had been taken and betrayed by someone far closer than anyone could have imagined. This revelation sent shockwaves through Jacksonville. The disappearance of a bright, innocent girl had transformed overnight into a case of unimaginable violence. Officers collected soil samples, fibers, and potential footprints. Detectives knew that in such cases, the smallest detail could carry the weight of truth. The autopsy results were harrowing. The medical examiner confirmed that Madeline had died from asphyxiation, with clear signs of the Zool assault. The brutality of the crime pointed to someone with both access and opportunity. Forensic swabs revealed biological evidence that would later prove decisive. DNA that did not belong to Madeline. That single detail became the silent witness to her final moments. As investigators turned their attention to those closest to her, inconsistencies began to surface. Her stepfather, who had been living with the family, gave statements that raised suspicion. Initially calm, his timeline of events shifted during questioning. Detectives noticed his nervous demeanor, avoiding direct eye contact, and his reluctance to explain his whereabouts during the critical hours of Madeline's disappearance. The house itself revealed further concerns. Forensic experts recovered traces matching the DNA profile found on Madeline's body. Items of clothing, hastily cleaned, bore microscopic evidence of blood that could not be dismissed. Each discovery tightened the net around the stepfather. Meanwhile, the wider community was shaken. How could such horror occur within the very walls meant to protect a child? For neighbors and family friends, the revelation that suspicion now pointed inward to a trusted figure in the household was both incomprehensible and enraging. As the DNA results came back from the state crime lab, the case took a decisive turn. The genetic profile was a match. The science had spoken, and it pointed directly to the man who should have been Madeline's protector, her stepfather. As investigators closed in on the truth, they began scrutinizing the stepfather's movements more closely. His calm exterior and attempts to act like a grieving parent had already raised quiet doubts among detectives. But what truly shifted the course of the case was his digital footprint. Police obtained a warrant to review his phone records, internet activity, and location data. What they uncovered painted a troubling picture. Late-night messages deleted around the time of Madeline's disappearance, unexplained gaps in his alibi, and suspicious searches that suggested an awareness of forensic procedures. GPS logs and cell tower pings placed him near the wooded area where Madeline's body was eventually found, contradicting his earlier statements that he had been at home the entire evening. This digital evidence, when combined with the forensic breakthroughs, created an undeniable chain. The DNA samples matched him conclusively, and now his own phone records placed him at the crime scene. Detectives realized that the man trusted as a stepfather had been living a double life, carefully hiding his predatory behavior behind the mask of normalcy. The arrest was carried out swiftly and methodically. Officers approached the family home with quiet precision, aware of the emotional weight of apprehending someone from within the victim's circle. He was taken into custody without resistance, but his silence spoke volumes. The confidence he once displayed in misleading investigators had crumbled under the weight of the evidence. During interrogation, detectives laid out the damning trail. The DNA results, the inconsistencies in his statements, and the recovered phone data. Faced with such irrefutable proof, his denials rang hollow. Prosecutors soon assembled a case built not on speculation, but on hard science and verified digital records. When the trial opened, the courtroom was tense. Madeline's family and community filled the gallery, awaiting justice. Prosecutors detailed the sequence of events, weaving forensic analysis with a timeline reconstructed from his phone activity. Expert witnesses explained how DNA matched him beyond reasonable doubt, while digital forensics experts showed the jury how his movements aligned with the disposal of Madeline's body. The defense attempted to suggest mishandling of evidence or misinterpretation of data, but the clarity of the findings left little room for doubt. Every layer of science, biology, digital tracking, and forensic pathology interlocked seamlessly, presenting a chilling but undeniable truth. In the end, the jury delivered its verdict: guilty on all counts. The stepfather was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, his mask of innocence forever stripped away. For the community, the conviction was a somber acknowledgement that betrayal had come from within the home, but justice, however delayed, had prevailed. The conviction did not rest on a single piece of evidence, but rather on the careful, methodical layering of forensic science. DNA was the cornerstone. Biological material recovered from Madeline's clothing and beneath her fingernails confirmed physical contact with the stepfather, leaving no margin of error. Yet equally significant was the role of digital forensics. Specialists testified how his phone told a story he never intended to share, location data that tracked his movements into the very woods where Madeline's body was found, records of deleted calls, and late-night internet searches about police investigation techniques. Together, these strands of evidence formed a lattice of truth too strong to deny. Forensic pathology further supported the timeline. Experts explained the condition of Madeline's remains, clarifying the cause of death and how the evidence aligned with the timeline reconstructed through digital records. The multidisciplinary collaboration between pathologists, DNA analysts, and cyberforensics units became a model case study in modern investigative science, underscoring how technology and biology together can expose crimes that once might have remained hidden. The community, meanwhile, struggled to reconcile grief with relief. For months, neighbors had stood side by side in search efforts, believing they were helping a stepfather desperate to find his missing child. The revelation that he had been the perpetrator all along shattered trust and left lasting scars. Yet, this same betrayal also fueled calls for reform. Community leaders demanded stronger checks on repeat offenders, mandatory reporting systems for suspicious behaviors, and wider investment in forensic technology to ensure no victim's case would be silenced by lack of evidence. Schools and advocacy groups turned Madeline's tragedy into a mission: to educate children about recognizing unsafe situations and to train parents in spotting hidden signs of abuse. Forensic experts, who had worked tirelessly behind the scenes, were honored publicly for their role in delivering justice, a reminder that science serves not just the courts, but the conscience of society. In the end, while no verdict could undo the cruelty inflicted, the outcome ensured that Madeline's voice was not lost. Her case became a rallying point for communities across the country, proving that even the most carefully constructed lies can be unraveled by truth, and that justice, though delayed, can still be achieved through persistence, respect, and the unyielding pursuit of evidence. Madeline's case did not end with the gavel's strike in the courtroom. It rippled far beyond. In the months following the conviction, lawmakers faced mounting pressure from the public to confront systemic blind spots that had allowed such a betrayal to unfold unchecked within a family home. Committees were formed to review child protection policies, and within a year, legislation was introduced mandating more rigorous background checks for guardians and step-parents assuming custodial roles. For Madeline's hometown, healing was a slower process. The wooded area where her body was found was transformed into a memorial garden, visited each year on her birthday by classmates, teachers, and neighbors who had once searched for her in desperation. Her name became synonymous with advocacy, as foundations launched scholarships in her honor, supporting young women aspiring to enter forensic sciences, ensuring that her story would inspire protection rather than only pain. Perhaps the most profound shift was cultural. Families began to question silence in the face of discomfort, teaching children that intuition and courage in speaking out can save lives. Police departments across the state adopted new community-integrated forensic units, where digital and biological specialists collaborated from day one of an investigation, reducing delays and increasing accuracy. Madeline's tragedy became a blueprint for reform, reminding institutions that behind every dataset, every laboratory slide, and every line of code was a victim whose story deserved truth. Madeline's story is one of innocence destroyed by the very person meant to protect her.